Welcome to the Détente Foundation podcast. We are so excited to be doing this. I am so excited to do this and to be doing it with you, Taylor. Not only is it such a great honor to work with you, but to be co-hosting a podcast, to be able to interview some of our favorite people that are really doing great work in the world is just such a gift. And we're to be able to have this opportunity to share the message of the Détente Foundation and even more importantly, share a message that's really important to both of us personally. And that's one of the reasons I'm so grateful you came into my life, and everybody that's working at the Détente Foundation and our board, and to really do some good work that we feel is important. And so I'm excited to do this. And I think today you're going to have some questions for me.
I am.
And we're going to start there.
Yes, we
and
are.
Get to some wonderful interviews in the future.
Absolutely.
Also.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, because I'm so looking forward to doing this podcast with you as well. It's going to be so much fun.
Yes.
And so today we're going to start by interviewing Lisa, just to give a background of who we are at the Détente Foundation, kind of how you got started on this journey, how you brought us all together, and the work we're really looking forward to doing in the future. So I guess we'd start off with introducing yourself. So who is Lisa Rayburn?
Oh, that's such a big question. There's that's a little hard to answer that question, but it's, I would say this, and it might not even be the answer that you expected, perhaps. But I remember years ago, I was being interviewed for some philanthropic work that I was doing. And someone asked me, why do I do the work that I do? And for many, many years now, I've helped people spiritually. But then I've also primarily, because of my background in law and business and building companies, is to truly, truly try to help create a better world. And for me, that also means safety and care for the people who are on this planet. And so, one of the reasons when I was asked, why I do what I do, I had said, well, I also know great suffering in my life. And I think because of that, I deeply, deeply care about people. And that's something that I've had since I was a little girl. It's something that everybody in my life knows about. And so what does that mean? It means I want people to feel safe and happy in this world and not have struggles and suffering and some of the hardships that we seem to be facing. And truly that, most of humanity has experienced for thousands and thousands of years. It's not unique to our time now, but we're at this especially unique time where we have the ability, both from our knowledge and our wisdom and from technology and from what we've learned, to create a really, really beautiful world for people. And so that's why I do what I do. And then on top of it, I think one of the greatest things that has ever been said to me was by Andrew Kimbrell, who we interviewed for the Reverence of Life film that we'll be talking about. And after we had filmed, actually, Andrew and I were talking, and he's just this amazing human. And and he's also in his life, encountered threats and all kinds of things. And he's continued to do this work that truly is saving our planet as director of the Center for Food Safety. And so we were talking, and I said, why do you continue to do what you do? And he said, well, I grew up in a family with trauma, and I never felt safe a day in my life. And he said, so I'm the perfect person for the job.
Wow.
And I just thought it absolutely caused me to also realize that, people who are out there in the world trying to make the world a better place, also come at it from a perspective of a soul. And that no matter who we are or what our experiences are, what our mistakes are, unfortunately, we live in a world right now where we seem to be judged on our biggest mistake.
Mm.
Instead of, someone could have a lifetime of service and doing wonderful things and make one mistake, and they're, reduced by that. And, but I am a firm believer that, our world and humanity and the planet needs absolutely every single human being that's on this planet. And so regardless of background or even the reasons for why we do things, that we really, really come together and create a better world. And so that's why I started the Détente Foundation. I wanted to do work that really helped humanity and the planet. And I hope that we're able to do so, whether, even, and the other thing about even doing good work in the world, sometimes the only influence we're going to have is in our own small influence, that can be in our area of influence, and it could be around the world. We just never know. And that's why we do the work that we do, and trust that things will unfold the way they're supposed to, and carry the beautiful message of our work in the meantime.
Absolutely. I love that. And so where did you come up with the name Détente? Why the Détente Foundation?
Yes. So, it's funny in marketing and branding, most of the time people want you to have a name that just makes sense and gives you an idea of what the organization or the company is about. Many people can't even pronounce Détente. And so it was, and I dug my heels in on it of why I was going to keep the name for two reasons. The first is that, and I should probably qualify by the fact that I have never really set out to do specific work. I've always been called to do work. And most of the time called to do work that I didn't want to do, that I didn't understand even what I was being asked to do. And so the name Détente came when I was in India. And in 2011, I went there, and at that time I was in the process of leaving my law firm, and a lot of things. I'd kind of had that external type of perfect life that people set out to accomplish. I had, been a named partner in my firm, and I had, done all of these things. But I had this calling in my soul to do something more, something different. And so I kind of left everything at one point in my life, and traveled and went to India. And I had thought I was going to go to India and stay there, and perhaps start an orphanage or do some other kind of work down there. And I was one night, that very late at night, I arrived in this beautiful little town called Rishikesh, and there was this man. They said Swami whomever was on the Ganges doing these readings, and I didn't know who this person was, and I thought, well, I want to do that. And so I went and I met with him, and what I thought he was going to say was that, oh, you've arrived in India, and this is where you're going to be. And he instead, first of all, he knew things about me no one knew. Like, no one knew that some of my deepest, darkest secrets he knew. And he also knew dates, which I thought was, it was one of the more powerful things I had ever experienced. And he said that, the things that have happened in your life were made by choice. And he also said, well, I had said to him that I was going to be staying in India. And he said, no, you're not. And basically had said, you're going to go back to Southern California, and you're going to shift consciousness in the world, and you're going to shift it in the area of business.
Wow.
And at the time, it made me really sad, because I had always wanted what I thought was more of spiritual pursuits than that. I thought, God, I've been told all my life that I was going to do all of these things. And so anyway, I was sad about that. And then I dismissed the whole thing. I thought, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm not going to do that. At one point, I wanted to be a nun. I wanted to go work with Pema Chodron and go to Nova Scotia. I did not know where Nova Scotia was, but I thought, I'm going to go find Pema Chodron and become a nun. So there were all these things going on. And so that night, when I had gone back into my room, I was writing, so I wrote for a long time, didn't look at it again, and finished my trip in India and returned back home. And a couple months later, I was reading in the journals, and in there at the top, I had written Détente. And I wasn't even really sure what that meant or what I even meant when I wrote it. And then, later, what I found out and what I know that it means to me is this absolute release of all tension out of a system. And originally, it started more of a political detente, so between countries or between nations, actually. And I knew from a spiritual perspective, it meant to me something even more than that. It was really releasing this tension out of ourselves, out of our consciousness, out of our souls, and then out of our planet, how we do that. So the original Détente logo even had Détente in the center of the planet to release tension out of our world. And now our logo has the Détente Foundation next to the logo, which really represents the planet. But it's also that the Détente Foundation is the foundation, and the strength doesn't even get involved in the chaos of the planet, but provides the strength and the releasing of all tension from the planet and from ourselves.
Wow.
So that's why I stayed with the name, and that's how it evolved, and why ultimately I dug my heels in on, no, that's the name, and we're gonna keep it.
That is a beautiful story. I didn't even know that background.
Right.
So I love this because I feel like I'm getting to see a whole other side of you, Lisa, and hearing so much more about the birth story of the Détente Foundation. And I love that.
Well, and it's one of the beautiful things why I'm really happy that we're doing this, because one thing that we have talked about doing this podcast is that anything goes.
Yeah.
That it's not going to be planned or scripted or structured.
Nope.
and because I think there really is a beauty in just saying things in the way that they are.
Yeah.
And one thing I also never try to do anymore is to change the message and the truth based on how it's going to be received. And that started with the name.
Yeah.
And so I used to kind of think about that maybe people wouldn't understand what I was talking about or what we were doing. And so I would alter it. And now I don't. This is the story. This is what we're doing. And, the results of that will be the results.
I love that. Wow.
Yes.
So one thing I also was curious about and wanted to get into is a lot of the work that we do is within food systems and regenerative agriculture and making sure that people have access and rights to clean, nutritious food. So how did you kind of decide to get into that space? And how did you get to where we are with working with leaders in that space?
Well, in 2008, I had read an article in Vanity Fair magazine about the United States food system. And this was interesting too, in that when I first started practicing law, I was brought into a wonderful firm and worked in the area of antitrust law. So antitrust and conflicts of interest and intellectual property. And I never understood why I was doing that work. It wasn't the intention of what I had when I set out. In fact, I had even considered environmental law and other things. But I was recruited by this incredible firm and these people I just loved. And so I had this background in this area of law. And many years later, or a few years later, I thought I had made an incredible mistake, that instead of becoming an attorney, I really should have gone to seminary, which again was something I also wanted to do when I was 18. I wanted to go to seminary, and I wanted to be a minister, but I didn't fit anywhere, what I thought in the world. So in 2008, I read this article about food supply. And because I had this legal background in antitrust and intellectual property and conflicts of interest, I just thought, I thought it can't be true. That I thought it was exaggerated, and that there's no way farmers in our country would be sued in patent infringement lawsuits over genetically modified seed, or that the just abject conflicts of interest in our food systems. And so I was looking at that, and it was heartbreaking to me, because I was also looking at it from this holistic perspective that that access to food, healthy, good food, should be a fundamental human right. That we were taking steps. At the time, I was only looking at the United States, but we were taking steps that were destroying sacred seed. We were taking steps that were, I felt very damaging to life itself. And I couldn't understand why it was happening. So I started to investigate it and look at it. And I started to have, and this is amazing how things happen the way they're supposed to. I thought, if I'm going to, and this just shows the power of an individual if you just want to get out there and help.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I needed to help United States food supply, who would I have help me? And so I started research in my home office. I had like names and charts, and the amazing thing is, we started to reach out to these people to see if they could help us, and every single one was like, yes, 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 to help. I couldn't believe it. And what that meant to me was something was happening beyond me. It was not me. It was this need that was coming through. And so one of the reasons, and at the Détente Foundation, and for all of us, that we focus on food supply is that, food systems and water systems and environmental systems interact with each other. Those systems go together. These aren't these independent things that are operating.
Right.
And our human system, this human amazing sacred body temple, we have a gut biome that has knowledge.
Right.
Our heart actually has, neural thought cells. And so what we consume in our bodies and how things harmoniously work together is very, very important for the survival of humanity, and then also for the impact on our planet. And so I also knew that, and probably because of my background and experience, that perhaps I could have the most influence. Well, and I was also thinking that if we don't shift the consciousness of some of the most powerful people in our world, and the people that are running corporations and organizations, if we didn't shift the consciousness of people with that dynamic, it was going to be very hard for the grassroots work that was trying to be done to really be successful. We need everybody. And so that's why I focus on leadership, because I was really shocked, and continue to be in 2021, that we have, well, shocked, but now I also understand it, what really appears to be failed leadership, in my opinion, from across the board. It doesn't. And so, but what I also know too, even being a leader in our organization and in my life, it is not easy to be a wise, benevolent, truthful leader. It just isn't. It takes work and introspection. And so a lot of my teachings, spiritually and in all ways, are really how, as leaders, we really begin to embody being the people we need to be to serve humanity and the planet. Because so many of the decisions and the things that are done in the world, they're either made without wisdom. And so there's these unintended consequences that are very, very damaging, or they're made for greed. And there's a lot of that, which is why I also come at it from a spiritual perspective, because we really need to look at, how we operate and why we make the decisions that we do, and really address that greed that happens. And then, but for the most part, we're operating so quickly in the world because of technology, and which is wonderful, but we're not thinking about what we're doing. So if we go and we create, in the United States, we start, having, a mono agriculture and land that just has genetically modified seed on it. It's going to have an effect around the world. And we're not thinking about that. We're not looking at it from this higher perspective. And so at the Détente Foundation, we focus on leadership as one aspect of who we really are as leaders. The definition I also give for leadership is, leaders are people who care about and take responsibility for the world that surrounds them. So leadership is an essence. So the mom and her family. In fact, most of the shifts in our food systems are from moms and their families, moms, wives talking to their husbands of, we've got to shift this. Yeah. And so, it's that leadership component that we just really need to think about things and how we do things. So that's why I think teachings are really important. It's not easy to embody who we need to be. And then I think as a society as a whole, to really get to where we need to be, we really need to ease up on people in a lot of ways, because you have really good people trying to do things, and there's just always criticism. So no matter what you're doing, it's not enough, or it's criticized, or it's wrong, or it's different. Or so we've become this world where it's easier to take people down than to really, really listen to what people are doing. We really need to listen to each other. So we've spent many years focusing on communication, and now nobody's listening. And we're just looking at what's wrong. So I know, because I've seen it, for instance, in food systems, it's also why, we haven't been able to make, the shifts that we really could, is because no matter what you do, it's not enough, it's wrong. And so we need to shift that. So I really think it's a crisis of faith. It's a crisis of spirituality. And, what I mean by that is no matter what our religion is, or our faith is, or our spiritual background, are we really living a higher calling? So for spirituality, for me, it's, are we living with wisdom? Are we living with truth? Are we living with compassion? Like, are we really living in the ways that we need to serve each other and serve our world? So that's within our organization. We, draw attention to leadership, to shift in consciousness. And then we really focus people on some of the most important issues in our world today, and that's food systems, food system first and foremost, and then water and environmental systems, how those are impacted.
And so you mentioned teachings. I think one thing we didn't really go over that we should cover is your background.
Oh,
so
yes.
So what are you teaching? What makes you qualified to do these teachings?
Great question. But by the way, whether you're qualified or not, go teach. Teach and share the knowledge and the wisdom. And so I don't know if I'm qualified or not, but I certainly have this background, and I guess it's, but I would also say I've been teaching all of my life. So since I was just, since I was a little girl, and by teaching, it's not from that arrogant, let me teach you because I know more than you. Right. It is definitely this, I love teaching and helping people understand things from a different perspective. And so, finally, after practicing law for many years and always helping people spiritually since I was a young girl, I've done that. I had these really these mystical experiences even when I was young, and when I was 15, that shifted my perspective on the world. But so I was always doing these teaching, but a few years ago, I did go to theological school. So I went to Claremont School of Theology and spent 3.5 of the greatest years of my life of, really doing what I had always wanted to do. And to be with these spiritual leaders from all faiths. Like, Claremont is just an incredible school because, it's just so open to people of all faith. And so there isn't the criticism or the judgment. It's what brings us together. And then how do we serve the world in that? So my specific doctorate, I did get a doctorate of ministry. So I do have a ministry degree, and the specific focus is on spiritual renewal, contemplative practice, and strategic leadership. And so to me, it brings, spirit into matter. That's when it's, oh gosh, how we bring who we are spiritually into strategic leadership. And then specifically, so my background in my studies too were in neuroscience and neurotheology and neuroplasticity. And so I've always been very interested. Like, for instance, I couldn't understand after years of people meditating and going, to retreats and workshops and all the work so many of us seem to do over the years. Why did we not have more peace in the world? Why were we not truly evolving? And not only that, but to me, it almost seemed like we were de-evolving. And so, like many things, at least for myself, I tend to go back onto my own experience to help with my teachings. And so I thought it had to have something perhaps to do with embodiment. And so what I mean by that is, I would go to the workshops or retreats or to India or whatever I was doing. And during that time, I had a heightened state of consciousness. I had a felt state of peace or of strength or whatever that may be. And then you get back and you're back out into the world, and you're driving in Southern California, wherever that is, and my whole energy would drop. It would just be a different dynamic. And so I thought, how do we truly, from all of the spiritual readings and teachings and things that I've studied my entire life, what is our real potential and possibility? And so that's when I started studying neuroscience and neuroplasticity and learning from these incredible people that we, in fact, can alter our consciousness, our DNA, our embodiment. Some may call that enlightenment. You can call it various things. And so I started actually in my doctoral program, I did a series of teachings on embodiment and on how do we truly embody principles like consciousness or love or compassion, and how are all of these things strengths? They're not weaknesses, they're strengths, and they're something that's very powerful and needed in our world today. And then what might we be able to accomplish? Because I was thinking, why haven't we accomplished? There's tremendous resources in our world. Why don't we have food systems that feed everybody? Why is there so much fighting and divisiveness and controversy? Why haven't we been able to really solve some of these issues? And so I began to think, and I saw some research on it, of what might happen, even say it's a population of 1 million, if 100 people were truly embodied humans, what we might be able to accomplish as a result of that. So I have a series of teachings on that, and that I take people through. I take leaders through that. I take people through them individually. And I take them through, teachings, why it's so important, what we eat and how we treat ourselves. But what I'm really looking at and really testing probably for the rest of my life is spiritual evolution. Like how we can really, because it's an amazing world we live in. You hear all the negative, right? And there's so much negative. But then when you really think about it, in 2021, it is the year for possibility. Like we have these incredible technologies, and then we have these incredible human capacities that we've learned. So that's why we need really everybody working together so that we can really approach these issues and these things that are really damaging to humanity and the planet, and come up with some really great solvable solutions, which there are plenty of those. So it's why we do, workshops and leadership gatherings and that type of thing, because it's not only possible, I think, all of us that also, love each other or love our world or our children or grandchildren, or even thinking about future generations, I think we have a responsibility to do the best we can while we're here.
Absolutely. All right. I'm trying to think. So, oh my God, Lisa, I can't.
So,
I'm going to cut that out.
Now that we have also talked a horrific amount about me, I think that time just kind of flew by. I really want to ask you some questions because, one of the things that I think is incredibly important and a big part of, part of what we do at the Détente Foundation is work with young people. And so I think, I know, young people in entrepreneurship is hugely important, and that all of us that are older really need to tee up the younger generations and make sure that they have, the information they need and the resources they need. And so it's also one of the reasons, I was so taken by you and, to meet you in the Young People in Entrepreneurship program. And then, and of course, to say, well, wait a minute, why we should be working together, instead of, creating something else. But you as a young person, you're so spectacular. And so
thank you.
What brought you into doing what you're doing? And, why do you do what you do? And why do you want to be here at the Détente Foundation when you could really be doing anything? I mean, you really could.
Well, now you're going to make me cry. I've always been, I come from parents who are servants. They have dedicated their lives to serving other people. And so that's really the environment that I was raised in. And I have spent the majority of my life doing public health type work. I've done a lot of work with people living with HIV for a really long time. I wanted to be a physician. I thought that was my kind of goal where I wanted to be for a very long time. But then I had my dad get really sick and I became his primary caretaker. And there's something about taking care of a parent and losing a parent that makes you question everything about life. And, I just went through a really dark time in my life. But during that time, I really realized that I wanted to do things on a greater scale. Not that, clinicians are fantastic. We need them. They save lives. I just found that my passion really lied more with the preventative macro type work. And so I got really, really fascinated and interested in nutrition. And so that's when I joined the program to work with Lisa, potentially to start my own nutrition business. And then once I learned more about what Lisa was doing, what the Détente Foundation was doing in terms of food systems and the environment and helping people grow spiritually from the inside out. And when I say inside out, I mean in terms of healing themselves and then developing that care enough for the world to go out and heal the world. And I was just so inspired by you and your work. And I remember talking to my husband one night and I said, I really want to work with Lisa. How do I just ask her? Should I just call her and say, how do I work with you? Because I knew, kind of like you talked about having a calling, I felt really called to work with you and to get involved with the Détente Foundation and everything that you were doing. So I'm love being here. I love working with you. And I feel like we have so much work to do. It's endless. And just the approach is so beautiful as well. And people are just drawn to you and your light. And I think that that's initially what draws them to the Détente Foundation and your work and our programs is I want to learn from Lisa. I want to help heal the world. And it starts from caring about myself and taking that and caring about other people. So that's just
now
kind of
now we're both gonna be crying because Well, and it's so beautiful, because especially when we are, and we've talked about this too, you know, our work is a lifetime.
Yeah.
And, you know, to be able to work with just beautiful humans, and it's not even like work. It's really this, you know, being together and having this time together. And I think there are these beautiful times where souls are drawn together, and, you know, and anything's possible when we have that. And you know, it's my intention, as we've all talked about, you know, is to really tee things up in a way where we hand it over to you guys at some point. You know, it's really what, the older people should be doing. You know, is doing what we can, and then handing it over to you guys and making sure you have everything that you need. And so I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be doing this with you and all of the wonderful people at Détente. We have, you know, such a great group, and we couldn't be supported more by some really incredible people.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really looking forward to the next few interviews. Actually, the rest of our podcast, I'm really looking forward to. But we have some great people lined up who are pioneers in their fields, people who are so dedicated to conscious leadership and really aligned with Lisa's and the Détente Foundation's message of healing the world.
Absolutely. And we will be talking to people that take active roles in food systems. And so we can, you know, kind of explain a little bit more about that too, why that's so important. And then also, you know, religious leaders and spiritual leaders, and some wonderful people to help us understand the environment more. You know, even when we're looking at environmental issues, it's, you know, there's a distinction between, you know, climate change and global warming. So there, you know, there's people like Wilfred Welch that we're going to be able to interview who can explain that to us, and how these things work. And we're going to have a great time doing it. And these wonderful people, you know, they always say yes. And so we'll be doing that and having a great time.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. It was so nice to meet you all, and we look forward to hanging out with you guys.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Thank you.